Sure, there's been 4 books so far. The first one was a collection of papers presented at a couple of different professional meetings. The second one, Challenging the Chip, Labor Rights and Environmental Justice in the Global Electronics Industry, was a collaboration between some academics and some NGO activists around the world. It was published by Temple University Press. The third one is a handbook, the Ecological Modernization Reader, published by Routledge. And then the most recent one is a textbook, my first venture in that direction, contracted originally with EarthScan, which along the way got bought by Routledge. So it's now EarthScan and Routledge. It's called Food, Globalization, and Sustainability. Well, the first book was a collaboration between a colleague, a Dutch colleague of mine, and each of us had organized panels on a similar topic at 2 different professional conferences. And it started out as a special issue of a journal. And it turned out that the editors of that journal were so interested in the topic that it was spun off as an edited collection as well. So we got both a special issue of a journal and a book publication out of that. And that was 12 years ago. It's still in print. Each of the books I've been involved with has a different story. The second book was actually a senior editor from a university press who approached one of my colleagues, Ted Smith, who at that time was the executive director of the Silicon Valley Toxics Coalition. And the editor knew that Ted had some interesting experiences and a strong network of NGO colleagues around the world, and was interested in putting together a book for Temple University Press, which specializes to a certain extent in kind of publicly relevant social science, but sometimes with a little bit of an activist twist as well. So that was initiated by the editor. I can say some more about that, but let me mention about the next 2 books, because again, each one had a different story. The third one of the books I've been involved in really was the book where I had to take the most initiative. And in that case, I was interested in developing a kind of foundational text in an area where none had existed before. And it was a matter of shopping around to find a publisher that was interested in that type of a text, and then a fairly protracted period. It was over a couple of years of developing a proposal and advancing it, modifying it to the point where the publisher was interested in the book. And the fourth book that I've been involved in so far was a textbook, and in that case, it came out of a visit by the EarthScan editor to my colleague's place of work, and he was actively seeking textbooks for their collection. So in each case, a different story. Some editor initiated, and at least in one case, identifying a particular niche for a book in an area that I worked in, and working with a publisher to put together an acceptable package for that purpose. I've essentially been my own agent. And I've done it enough times now. I'm reasonably confident and comfortable about presenting myself. It's a matter not unlike publishing a journal article, but in a different context, where you try and match a project with a publisher, and over time you develop some sense of the areas, the titles that different publishers publish in. And then, again, over time, through meeting at conferences and other contexts, you develop some personal relationships with the editors who commission books. So at this point, I'm fairly comfortable presenting an idea to an editor myself. Yeah, the conferences are actually pretty key. You can set up meetings with editors, commissioning editors in advance. They go to the conferences because they're, for them, a great place to meet people. And whether it's a quick get to know you or a more lengthy let's talk about your proposal kind of a meeting, it's a great opportunity on both sides to learn about the publisher on one hand, and for the publisher to get some sense of what project that you have that might fit into the collection that they're developing. And there are different ways of presenting a proposal. Something that I like to do is to, and I counsel my graduate students to do that now, is to put together a short précis for a proposal, not a full-blown proposal, which you'll need to develop somewhere along the line, but really just a page or two giving an overview of the project, kind of an elaborated abstract. And I do a little bit of fishing, so to speak, before an opportunity where I might meet with an editor. And if I find out that they're going to be at the same conference that I'm going to be at, so much for the better. But that's not absolutely a requirement. One of the key things is really identifying a publisher or multiple publishers, if you're lucky, that publish books of the nature that you think that you would be interested in publishing. So having that match is a real critical thing. So I suggest to my graduate students and others, always try to imagine your title alongside of other titles that have already been published by a particular publisher. And there's no one size fits all. There's a lot of different ways that books get published. Sometimes there are series, so you're not necessarily dealing with directly with a publisher's agent, but you're dealing with a series editor, so that's another avenue. Sometimes publishers have their own agenda that may or may not be in sync with your agenda. So if you look at the trends in which they are publishing, just an example, right now there's focus, because they make a lot of money on it, for publishers to produce handbooks. You wouldn't have seen that 5 or 10 years ago. But looking at the list of current books, trying to match your book idea with other publishers is a key thing. Something I just did a few days ago with a graduate student here in the Netherlands is to sit down with them and take a series of keywords. And I went to Google Scholar and did keyword searches, see which publishers published books in those general areas. We came up with a list of about 5 or 6 publishers who published in the area that she was working in. And I gave her a starting place for, okay, now those are the publishers that I could see my work fitting into. Who do I know? Or in this case, I had some leads for her as well. Who do we know that we might approach just to give an initial contact and get some feedback? You know, would they be interested at all in what I'm doing? The part that I enjoy the most, there's several of them. There's a nice feeling of satisfaction when you get to that point in negotiations, which can take quite a while, where you actually sign the contract. So that's kind of validating the effort that you put into it at that point. There's another point a year or two down the line where you're submitting your publication register, where it feels really good. You know, put your book to bed, so to speak. And then there's kind of a design process, which is gratifying as well, where you work with an artist or a graphic designer and kind of depicting the art and so forth. Something that I like that not everyone enjoys. I've worked several times now with a professional indexer, and a really nice index on a book, to me, is a real key for a successful text that is widely useful. So putting together a really nice index for a book that I've invested already quite a bit of effort into, something that I get satisfaction out of. Well, something that is not very frequently recognized for very many publishers is once you have published a book, you've completed all your work, it's in print, it's available through various ways. A lot of times, I would say 99% of books, or even a greater number than that, just kind of fall off the map. You kind of expect when you put so much effort into preparing a publication that just automatically the publisher is going to take it and run and promote it and so forth. To a surprising degree, that does not happen. And particularly in academic circles, many of us find ourselves doing what we needed to do to promote our own works. That's disappointing in a way, but that's the reality of much of academic publishing. Well, something I didn't fully appreciate was the business dimension of publishing. You realize that most publishers, whether they're not-for-profit university publishers or commercial publishers, are in it to make a profit or to gain revenue. What you don't realize is that when you submit a proposal, it's not only about the intrinsic worth, but they actually have to make a business case for each publication. So that relates to the type of editions that are published. It relates to how many copies are printed. A publisher won't touch something if they lose money on it. They just can't. So part of your job in preparing a proposal is really to analyze the market, to make a business case for publishing your book. And that's something that I think when I was first getting into it, I didn't fully appreciate. And at this point, it's something, being aware of that, that I can take into account putting together a proposal for a publisher. Now, the key thing, I think, is thinking about your audience, and it's wide open. In today's world, particularly among Switzer Fellows, I would encourage to think about a global audience. Not every publisher is oriented toward the global audience, but the most fast-growing audiences for publications in the environmental area are in places like China and India and elsewhere around the world. So when you're thinking about a publication in your field, think about publishers and think about a content that might reach out and communicate to people not only in the United States, which perhaps we first think about, but are relevant and presented in a way that are accessible to people elsewhere as well.